Hey everybody, Keith Hilson with the Trombone Shop at Schmidt Music. So, as a part of our continuing series on how to build up your own warm-up routine, I want to talk about one of the fundamentals. So part of the idea that I like with my warm-up routine that I talked about in our previous video is the idea of starting from the foundation. So starting from the concepts most important and slowly building one on top of the other to make sure that our foundation, again, those fundamentals are solid. If we don't have that, that bedrock to build on, everything else up above is going to be shaky. It's not going to have the stability, the control, the reliability that we're looking for. So today I want to talk about what I consider to be the absolute root of everything we do as trombone players, that true bedrock, which is air. One of the things I like to tell my students is that 80+% of the issues we have as trombone players have something to do with air. Too much air, not enough air, too fast, too slow, too big, too small and focused, something to do with air. Now maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but so often I found that if we're thinking about using our air in the right way, it solves a lot of different issues. And so I want to talk for you just a few minutes about how I think about air, how I think about breathing, what I do in my warm-up routine, how do I get this air prepared, what kind of thought processes am I going through. So the first thing that I do with my warm-up routine every morning is prepare my body to breathe. So in a lot of ways, if we think about what we're asking our body to do when we're using our air, we're asking it to be very efficient, and depending on what kind of playing we're doing some frankly fairly aerobic breathing for an extended period of time. So just like any other athlete involved in an aerobic activity, whether it's runners, whether it's track, whether it's football, tennis, on and on and on, just like them, why shouldn't we prepare our bodies to be ready for this physical aerobic activity? So for us, that means stretching. Now, this is certainly not a new concept. When I was doing my undergraduate studies in the early 2000s, Sam Palafian and Pat Sheridan came out with their breathing gym. And at the time, this was a real innovation for a lot of folks. And so the whole idea is just like we're talking about, is preparing your body for breathing. They had a bunch of great breathing exercises, everything there. Where I really started thinking about this again is when I saw a master class from the great tubist Oystein Bodsvik a handful of years ago. And he started off his master class talking about these activities. And boy, I'll tell you, once I started incorporating them into my daily routine, it made a huge difference for me. Because again, we're asking our body to do a lot of very physical activity here. Why shouldn't we prepare it? So what I always start my morning off with is some stretching. And I think about this if, for a lot of us, we had swimming lessons. I think about a lot of the same stretches that I did when I was in swimming lessons. So going and rolling the shoulders and getting everything loosened up there, turning, twisting the torso, trying to loosen up our, lower midsection there, stretching everything there. One of the places I get a lot of tension, especially early in the day, is in my neck. And so trying to get everything just really nice and loosened there. One of the stretches I find the most beneficial are side stretches. So stretching to the side there and trying to pull as much as I can. And it really, for me, I really feel things loosening up along the side here. And you'll see later in the video, I'm going to talk about how we breathe. With my breathing concept, it's a very active breathing. The whole upper torso is involved with the breathing that we're doing, the inhalation, the exhalation. And so helping to prepare that whole body, helping to loosen everything up, get those muscles ready makes a huge difference. If you want to try this out, take some time at some point here and go through and try to do your natural, playing ready breathing, using the air like you try to do. Then do some stretching. Do some of these motions, try to loosen up your whole upper torso, and then try breathing again. If your experience is anything like mine, you're going to notice a big difference in how much your body moves, how efficiently it's able to move that air in and out, how much lung capacity increases. When I do that stretching, I feel like I'm able to physically take in more air as well. Breathing is a physical activity. And there's a lot of different breathing concepts, and there's certainly no one right or wrong answer, but kind of the breathing concept that I've found that's really, really worked for me is the idea of three-dimensional breaths. I used to call them expansion breaths. In other words, we're allowing the whole upper torso to be involved with the breathing activity. One of the sources I use for a lot of my breathing and kind of overall posture ideas is the Alexander technique. If you're not familiar with the Alexander technique, it's basically a method where we think about how our body is, different body parts are positioned in relationship to each other, and how we maintain those relationships and what that can do in terms of overall performance. And so one of the concepts they use there, and again, certainly not a new one, a lot of different people talk about this, is the idea that when we breathe in, to really, physically actively breathing, the whole rib cage, the whole upper torso wants to expand outward. And what's really nice about that, when we're thinking about this idea, it does give us a lot of lung capacity. It gives us a lot of control, not only on the inhalation, but on the exhalation. When we're allowing our body to expand, when we go to exhale, the body itself is involved with the exhalation process. So we're not having to physically push the air so much, where we're trying to shove it out. Instead, we're allowing the body to naturally come back to its resting position, what I call kind of the neutral position. And by doing so, we don't have to physically work as hard, and we have more control over a lot of ways. We're not having to push it. We can help guide that more instead. And so for me, when I'm using my air properly, my whole upper torso, the front, sides, the back, even the shoulders, and I know that's a controversial idea, but even the shoulders are all expanding outward, not necessarily up, and we definitely don't want tension, but everything should just be going outward. This whole idea of the 3D breath, I got that term from my flute colleague who works here. And if you ever want to talk to players who need to use air efficiently, talk to flute players. At least with us as brass players, all of our air is going into the instrument. With flute players, the majority of their air is going right over the top of the instrument and away. And so they have to use their air very, very efficiently. And a lot of them think about the same kind of concept. And so this idea of just expanding outward. And then when we go to exhale, just letting everything come back to the center. And again, it gives us, I feel like it gives me a lot of control in the speed of that exhalation, how fast or slow it's moving, how much air, how little air it's moving, and I don't feel like I have to push. So now that we've thought about how we're using our whole upper torso, what's involved here, how are we getting that air in, we need to think about the start of that process, specifically the face, the neck, right? The oral cavity. What's happening here? How are we shaping this part in order to best guide the air into our cardiovascular system? So with this, the concept I really try to think about, and I learned this from one of my graduate school teachers, is the idea of low breathing. Not necessarily noiseless breathing, but trying to think very, very low sound. So whenever I'm listening to a student and they're getting a lot of tension in their breathing, what I invariably hear is like this. So anytime we're hearing any kind of that high sound or like that, that means that we're creating a lot of tension either in the oral cavity, more often in the throat here. We're constricting things down, and boy, it's going to be really, really difficult to get that air moving properly. So first thing I'm always thinking about is lowering the jaw within reason, and there, to get into more advanced techniques, we don't always have to be doing this, but thinking of that idea of opening up the whole oral cavity to allow air to come in. If you have a student, if you need to work on this, one great way to talk about this is to talk about yawning. Yawning is our body's way of trying to get as much air in as quickly as we can. And what does it automatically do? It locks that bottom jaw open. And it's amazing when we think about that idea, as soon as we open up that bottom jaw, so often it tends to open up the throat as well here. So I'm thinking of opening up that cavity, dropping that jaw some, keeping things nice and open inside, and then trying to think a very low sound. So it can be, like one of the examples that my teachers have used, to think about the lowest note on the piano, trying to think of a soundless breath. In the breathing gym, they use the idea of actually using the hand to create the sound instead of using your mouth, your embouchure to do it. Like this. So whatever feedback you need, that idea of trying to keep as little resistance as possible in the mouth, in the throat, and keeping it really low sounding, very soundless. And so often if we're breathing, inhaling efficiently, that's hopefully how it's going to be. Now, it's not always perfect, and this is one of the areas I really struggle with, especially when I get into playing situations. But that's why we practice, that's why we warm up, is so that we can try to keep reinstilling these ideas. So hopefully between that nice, open embouchure, that low sounding breath, and the expansion here, everything, then all together, you're going to be moving some air really efficiently. So now we've got all the concepts in place, time to practice it. So again, there are any number of fantastic breathing exercises out there. I mean, there are books and books written on all of this. Again, some of the concepts I like, I've took from the breathing gym. So for example, what I'll do in the morning is I'll either be my own metronome, or I'll set a metronome, and I'll think about just inhaling, exhaling. So for example, I'll do 4 beats in, 4 beats out, and the whole idea is just that I'm trying to breathe in as evenly as possible for the entire 4 breaths of the inhalation. And then for the 4 beats of the exhalation, same thing. I'm trying to breathe out very, very evenly, plan it out so that when I get to the end of the 4th breath, I'm just run out of air. So it looks something like, I get to just the beginning of that for next beat of the measure, I feel like I've emptied everything out there. And then, as I feel like I'm starting to move that efficiently, then I start reducing the number of beats I have to inhale. But I still want to be trying to get in the same amount of air to exhale. So for example, I'll do 3 beats in, 4 beats out. And then I'll go to 2 beats, then I'll go to 1 beat. And there, boy, when you're doing 1 beat in, 4 beats out, at that point, you're really starting to see how efficiently am I opening everything up, how efficiently am I using that air, because especially when we're in performance situations, that's really going to be a more realistic amount of time we have to be inhaling. We want to be as open, as efficient, as confident in that process as possible. And again, there are any number of different breathing exercises out there, but I've really found that this combination, starting off with the stretching, starting off thinking about that breathing, what are my breathing concepts? Thinking about that expansion, that 3D breath, everything going outward, thinking about that low sound, thinking about establishing my posture, and then working on that in these breathing exercises. Once you get into it, it only takes a couple of minutes a day. A lot of times I'm getting ready to start practicing. My practice routines are typically in the morning. And so let's say I'm getting my kids ready for school. Okay, I've about got one of them ready to go, and then I'm ready to practice. So while I'm helping them, I'm already starting to think about these concepts a little bit, starting to prepare myself to get ready to start playing. And boy, once I started incorporating this into my daily routine, I feel like it made all of the difference in the world. Hopefully we had some really useful concepts. So we're going to have further videos coming out talking about how to keep building our own warm-up routine here. If you have any comments about this at all, if you've used any of these concepts and they've been helpful, or if you have some other ideas that you use that you have found to be really beneficial, feel free to leave those comments below here. As always, think about giving us a thumbs up. If you haven't done so, think about subscribing to our channel here, and you can always find us on all of the social media channels. So thank you very much for watching, everybody.